Hey, what's going on, everybody? Thanks for joining us today. Today is our bi-weekly show. It's where we go back and look back at the top news stories and top show art topics that we've had over the last 2 weeks on the show. It gives us an opportunity to slow down, revisit some of the topics. Things change all the time in AI, so that's what we're going to do. Let me tell you about some of the topics we'll be discussing today of varying length. We talked about what shadow AI was. We've talked about, obviously, DeepSeek was all over the news in the last 2 weeks, so that's come up several times. We talked about the O3 drop and what does deep thinking mean. We talked a lot about deep thinking and deep reasoning yesterday on the show. We talked about all the different AI models explosion. We've talked about cloning your voice and cloning, what does it mean to have a cloned avatar? And there's some really cool questions that came up in the comments about that. So all sorts of things to do. Oh, and Nvidia as well. We talked about Nvidia. So that's what we'll be discussing today. Today is February 7th, 2025. This is the Daily AI Show. Thank you for joining us. We're here every single weekday at 10 a.m. Eastern. So come and hang out with us if you like it. You can come join us on YouTube and be live in the chat. We have tons of people who do that every single day. You can also go to thedailyishow.com where you can sign up for our newsletter that goes out every Sunday. Other than that, if you love what we're doing, like and subscribe is always greatly appreciated. With me today, is Beth and Andy, and I'm Brian. And yeah, I mean, if I look back over these last 2 weeks, this is the fun of this show, right, guys? Like I'm always impressed. I always go back, I go, oh, we've covered some stuff. We've really gotten into some of these conversations. And, one of the ones that probably comes up right away for me is, all the news that came out of DeepSeek. And what I was sort of thinking about with the show is that's sort of shifted and evolved. We still have people who are like, this is still an amazing model. Obviously, more sort of news has come out about maybe what the actual true cost was. And so we debated that on the show a little bit about like, well, how impressive is it if they really had 50,000 H100s and $7 million? Is that the same thing as saying they trained a model and whatever they said it was, $6,000 or whatever the number was? 6 million, 6 million, 6,000, you know. So
What's a few million among friends?
listen, with AI, not much.
Does zero really matter?
I mean, honestly, come on now, with AI, you guys know, like they throw out numbers that are so big that it messes with you a little bit because, if anybody had like whatever, a couple, $20 million valuation or something, you'd be like, oh, that is still a sizable company. These AI companies come around and it's like they're doing investment rounds of 80 and 90 million at a pop in a series A or whatever. They're talking about billions plus evaluations. You've got Sam Altman saying like, hey, I think this investment's going to be over $1 trillion. You've got Stargate for what's 500 million. Like it's almost like ruining it.
500 billion.
See, this is exactly my point. 500 billion. That's exactly my point. My brain is still in the mode of like 500 million is a lot of money. No, 500 billion, 1,000 times more, and it's like, it's just, anyway, that's where my brain went first. So I don't know if you guys have any thoughts now being 2 weeks, maybe past this sort of bump. We obviously, if we go back, it was Christmas Day when DeepSeek sort of put out their first model. And then quickly thereafter, there was stuff about image generation, and R1 is the one that got a lot of people's attention. And I still see Ethan Malik, who we follow all the time, giving a lot of credit to that model and saying how much he thinks other people who weren't paying attention to AI are saying, oh, we feel this is different. And so I'm curious to hear what you guys think now, having 2 weeks of processing. Where are you on R1? Where do you still think it is? Is it revolutionary? Was it more of a flash? Did the news make it out to be more than it is? Or is it actually something that's really, really impressive?
Well, it's very impressive to come from a company that, wasn't really even on the road map. We weren't tracking that company at all. And then suddenly it's everywhere. Everybody's offering it in every platform in some way who isn't directly, motivated to promote their own model, like say Anthropic or OpenAI are. And so very impressive. I think it's in my mind, I dismiss the idea that it is, a breakthrough accomplishment in the economic training of a model. They did make significant advances, but all of those are open source and will be employed by all the rest of the people who are training frontier models now going forward. So let's put the disruption that it seemed to represent when they I think, misrepresented the actual totality of the investments that were required to support the development of such a very, very, top tier frontier model. And I also observed that using R1 as the reasoning model in Perplexity or elsewhere does give you a very satisfying response. It's not clear to me that it's significantly better than O3 Mini when you're using it in that context, but I'm sure that people who are pushing the limits of it, like Ethan Malik and others, are sensing something that's considerably better about R1. Now, I want to point out something. You know, the biggest downside of using R1 is if you don't use it in Perplexity, which is running on a US running operation of the open source model, you are connecting to servers in China, and anything that you put into that is basically given over to China. And that raises this question of how maybe unjust the uh, proposed banning of TikTok is when there isn't a ban of R1 and the access to DeepSeek. But that's just because this thing exploded onto the scene and the government hasn't had time to react to that. But there are already discussions underway to ban DeepSeek in the United States in government systems, and that would potentially lead to a similar challenge, just like against TikTok, to prevent the possibility of the intrusion into the American population of a propagandistic model, which R1 seems to be, right? You cannot ask it questions about Tiananmen Square, for example. It will use to answer those things or to say anything negative about the Chinese government. But, you know, maybe the Stargate systems that are developed by OpenAI in the future and by the US government, those will similarly, not allow anything to be said negatively about Trump. So that's my take on where DeepSeek is right now. I think there are alternatives to use that are, you know, functionally equivalent, nuanced advances or advantages if you use R1. I don't, see a practical application of those in my work in AI. But I'm really glad that it came out. I think it really does shake up the market a little bit and propel everybody because they delivered by being open source and showing exactly in their research papers how they accomplished the high levels of reasoning capability there. That's now available to everybody.
Right. I agree, Andy, like, to a certain extent, um, uh, it DeepSeek only had to drop, right? Only had to drop, had to impress the people that it impressed, and then it added nobody needs to use it from now on. I mean, they're doing things with it because it's open source and all of that, but it had such a big ripple effect. We are perceiving that it had such a big ripple effect in the rest of what is dropping, that even it like DeepSeek's influence is far less than its actual use with DeepSeek because it just I mean, everybody seemed to scramble and say us too. Don't forget about us, right? Like,
I think what you're both saying is right, and Carl, I'd be curious what you have to say about this too, but, like, here's what I do think happened. I think you guys are both kinda said this, but this is my thing. It had an overall positive effect, and Ethan Malik has talked about this, but we've definitely seen this as well. I gave a reference of being at a, business meeting, a week ago, I guess it was, a week and a half ago, it was last week, and somebody at the table, uh, we weren't there for AI, said, "What do you think about DeepSeek?" And it kinda knocked me off my stool a little bit, and I was like, "Wait, hold on, you're asking me about DeepSeek?" And I wasn't used to that. So it had clearly had a November 22 sort of moment, right, where ChatGPT came out, and if you well, you guys remember, if our audience remembers, if you don't, if you weren't paying attention there, it felt like magic. It felt like, how is this thing, talking like a human and it's interacting with me? And oh my God, it can write this silly poem back to my mom. And, all the things people were initially using ChatGPT 3 or 3.5 for early on in the days. And it truly felt like magic. People immediately early on were saying, is this AGI? Is this artificial generator? And now, no, I don't think anybody's having a conversation about whether GPT 3.5 was a version of an AGI, because we all had to catch up with what it was doing, how transformers work, that it was a predictive model. And so everybody, our whole crew got smarter along the way. And so now we have different opinions about what true AGI or ASI might be. And we'd imagine that those are going to have to get changed along the way as well. I feel like this is what R1 did, is it hit the news cycle so hard, and that you started to have people who were talking and using it. And maybe to your point, Andy, they won't stay with R1. They'll move over, and now they'll be more likely to try O1 or O3, or we showed Gemini's deep thinking yesterday, or the deep reasoning. So maybe its true lasting impact will be that drop was enough to break out of the bubble, as we've talked about. And it's having this ripple effect of actually introducing new people to these newer reasoning models. Perhaps people who only really in their mind thought ChatGPT was still good at the 3.5 stuff it could do, and didn't realize that we had moved so far in, 24, 26 months since it landed. So I don't know if you guys think the same way, but that's where I really see the big impact here.
Um, I would like to think it did, but I don't think it did, because the last couple weeks when I've been going prospect meeting, I asked, hey, everyone heard of DeepSeek? Hands up. Everybody download or use it? No one. Not one of every single prospect. So I was like, oh, so everyone's heard of it, but the same people who don't use AI don't use AI, like won't use it. They'll still use ChatGPT. But so that's what I was like, oh, because I thought too, I was like, oh, well, it's free. People want to go do it. But maybe it's just the industries that we were in, but it's zero. So I think there's still an apathy to just AI in general. And we, in our AI bubble, hype up ourselves and sometimes think we represent the general, like everybody else, but it's still not. And so it's surprising that I still like, and even, hey, anybody here at Claude? Nope. I was like, no one in the room of you 35 accountants, not one. So that's where I was like, okay, I know where we are still. And it's not as far as I think a lot of people.
I think you're right, Carl, about the business environment. There's a very low level of penetration. The people who are working in, businesses have a lot on their plate. They don't have a lot of time to do the, continuous familiarization and connection to all the news and the rapid developments in AI. And they're not yet at any significant percentage employing it at the employee level. And there's resistance inside companies for the implementation of AI. So I think that's true. But I think the counterpoint to whether or not DeepSeek had an impact on a broad scale is that they have, delivered an application on the mobile devices that, along with the incredible press flurry that happened, has a significant number of people having DeepSeek on their phones now. What are the security and other implications of that? Because that application is the application that's connected back to the servers in China.
And we know from Meta's data, right, that once installed, depending on what its system is, you don't actually have to be using it necessarily for data to get sent. Like Meta is, my understanding is that Meta's apps are send like more than the average collect and send more than the average. But, Andy, that makes me think, of the shadow AI episode that we did in terms of, being in an organization that is resistant, for whatever reason in the various places. And if you are someone or you have someone in your organization who really wants to use AI, now it's in the shadows, right, Brian? How do you wanna, that was a show topic that you, wanted to talk about.
Well, me and Andy, yeah. I mean, we had a conversation about. I can't remember who else was on that show. Sorry, I know Andy and I did a few, but the idea obviously is that there's there's many companies that have AI deployed, but they don't necessarily know that they have AI deployed, and that could be as simple as a prompt that somebody's using over and over again. Perhaps somebody has built something a little more complex, like a custom GPT. Maybe it's gone farther than that. Maybe they've broken out of ChatGPT, and now you have employees who've built simple workflow automations that are streamlining. Excuse me. I apologize. That's streamlining data um, through their different apps, through APIs, and they just figured out how to do it in Make and blah blah blah. And so yeah, the idea being that what actually happens to a company if they no longer understand the true value of AI to their bottom line, and what happens when these employees leave. The shadow AI part of it, I mean, it goes both ways. But the shadow AI part of it is how detrimental is it going to be, if not today, in the very near future for companies if they don't get a handle on what's being used? And so the whole conversation got into, well, look, there's Jimmy was on the show. I remember that because Jimmy was saying, like, I think, you have to be supportive of this from the executive side and but have a trust but verify type scenario with it or whatever. So yeah, it's a big part of it. And I mean, Karl, you've talked about this, right? With the not necessarily shadow AI, but to connect shadow AI with our clone yourself episode that we had a couple days ago. It was 6 days ago as I look at my screen. Um, you're the first person I remember bringing up, Karl, about the idea of, hey, what happens if somebody's using the voice, right? Maybe it's an executive or whatever at a company,
Mhm.
and they continue on to use that voice beyond when that executive, and do they have naming rights over that? Like, is this like we see everything in the college football with name, image, and likeness, so NIL. So like, do executives or just general employees need to start thinking about this when you can use my voice for training or you can do whatever, and then I leave Scaled, and then Scaled's like, oh yeah, but no, after you left, we created 30 more training
Mhm.
idiots. And we just kept using your avatar voice because you had already set it up. And then I go, well, hold on, we never talked about that. And they were like, we never not talked about that. We're not wrong on your okay. Now what? Do I have a right to it? Or because it was created underneath Scaled? And so I think you're the first person that brought that up. I thought it was such a great point about as we move forward here and as it gets so easy to do these clone versions, and also how that applies to the shadow AI side, but also who owns what? And do more employees need to start thinking about that as they think about who maybe their next employer is going to be and whatever?
Well, kind of tied to that is r- part of who owns what is when you have your agent to do something for you, whose responsibility is it? And then here, how about if it's one or two steps removed? Your agent, my agent, told Microsoft Copilot to build an agent to do this. That agent did something that had negative consequences somewhere down the road. So, am I still ultimately responsible for it after I told my agent who told another agent or built that agent? That's 1 degree of separation. How about 2 or 3 degrees of separation?
Yeah.
'Cause
Yeah.
we'll have smarter things be like, "Hey, you know what's smarter for me to do? I'm gonna build, 50 agents." And then you know what's smarter for those 50 agents to do? Build their own 50 agents. So what happens when you have things like that? And then if I built the agent for one company and it was my personal agent, and then my agent built a whole bunch for that company, who owns that right to do that? Like, no, there's no contracts right now that even remotely outline that. So I can go into any company, build a bunch of agents, and be like, "Hey, that's my property, by the way. I kind of signed a contract, but in the contract, it never stated anything about specifically about agents."
Hmm.
And then I'm sure there's like a blanket clause in there, something about, proprietary rights about something, but I'm like, no, this agent is mine. I built it and it built something, and now I'm taking it back. What is that? That the whole concept of work changes too.
Right.
So yeah,
And
yeah.
yeah, I mean, you're making me think about the shift that underwent, where the email would be the position instead of the name, right? So that you email, or there's some back-end process where the person's actual email has the new position, that so that people don't have to know, like that the position changed, right? So all of that is based at the position, the job title, and whoever is doing it. Is that what we're gonna have, where we have the agent associated with that? And I don't know about you, but I definitely sometimes get emails from a job that I'm no longer at because I knew something, right? So, but I know that, right? The email is coming to the human me who is reading it with my human eyeballs, and I'm giving my human answer back. If it is an agent talking to an agent, does that then just happen behind things? Particularly if the agent that represents you still knows all the answers, right? Like, actually, we like you better. And you don't even know that that's happening unless you're monitoring your agent's response, or unless the company is monitoring their agent's response. And I'm gonna go out on a limb and say for the next 5 years, that's gonna be a little messy whether the company is monitoring their agents.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. How you both make good points about it. Like who's ultimately responsible? Carl, I like what you said about like if my agent goes out and does something and I'm the human that created the agent, and then the agent recruits another agent and X, Y, and Z happens, whose hand gets slapped if it goes wrong? Is it the person who initially did it, even though that 2 degrees of separation at that point makes it kind of hard to say, well, this was the error of a human versus this is the error of the AI or whatever. So I don't really know. And then Beth, on your side, like, are all companies going to essentially ensure that they're able to, through keystrokes, through whatever the AI process might be, to make sure that they know how to do my job so that they have a safety net? If any employee walks away, there's the agent version of that employee that's going to protect them, you know, until
I
he's maybe bring another hand back.
I think the thought experiment of the agents spawning additional agents is a good one. It's interesting, but I think in practice that there aren't going to be authorized email accounts that are independent for the agent. So anything that's done, it might well follow the operator model. So OpenAI's operator we discussed in the last 2 weeks, that is the model where the agent is working through your browser and your authenticated credentials. And it requires, because of the way OpenAI designed it, it requires that you authorize even steps in the process that it's undertaking. And so you're responsible for what the agent is doing because it's actually inhabiting your email accounts and your computer access to corporate systems and so on. So I think that that's going to be enough to kind of contain against this possible proliferation of agents out there that are gonna create havoc somehow, and that might fall back on you. I think it's going to be better controlled because it's going to be in this model of your agent. It's not allowed to go out and freely roam the internet and create accounts and so on. Although that's certainly a capability of agents, and it's been demonstrated in AI labs now that you can create an agent that could go out and do things like set up and create a whole new meme coin and you know create an account and it owns $100 million worth of that coin. That's something that Nate Jones has talked about at length. This the I forget what the terms are for that particular one. It's goat.
No. Yes, you're on the right track. I would like that not to be a thing that is discussed on the show. Don't look it up, cause you will regret it. I have not seen it, and I'm nope. Godius Maximus, I think is,
Okay, right.
Okay.
and
I was like,
it's
what are you all talking about? Like, you said nope so fast, Beth. I was like, what? So anyway, that's right.
yeah, trust me. But I think, to Andy's point, and Carl, I'm curious what you think about this. Why would the agent use, um, actual words or email if they can do something faster. Like, are agents talking in tokens? Right? Aren't they using a mathematical code to communicate? Or maybe there's just a more efficient communication. And those are the things that make me wonder. Like, we were talking about shadow AI with humans. What happens with shadow AI when it's just a more efficient way of communication back and forth? And he's like, wow. Yeah, Carl. Oh, your mic did a thing.
No,
Oh.
I think you're just on mute.
Oh no, I'm just on mute. I was talking to a friend of mine yesterday, talking about um what businesses would need to figure out a way on how to adapt to interact with agents, because you're no longer marketing, communicating with people. There has to be an agent component to it, because there's a lot of things right now: scraping, browsing, um, extracting information, and they do not care about your pop-ups. They don't care about how you've set up. They don't care about gated pages. They don't care about any of that stuff. Just extract the information and give you back the report, and it's faster. So how do you go about that? So I don't think the infrastructure we have set up um, was not for agents. There has to be a lot of retrofitting. I don't know if it's a brand new it's a decentralized internet. I'm still looking at that new Pied Piper meme from Silicon Valley, and Jin Yang stealing Pied Piper. But that's how I kind of think. So what's going to happen? Just think of a go-to market motion. You're going to have an operator, an agent, go into Google AdWords, create create the Google ads. Then you're gonna have an operator going to LinkedIn, creating setting up the campaigns there. You're gonna have another operator for organic content, right? And then the human is just there to manage all these operators or all these agents. So there's gonna be a go-to-market motion, and everything's gonna be run by an operator. But then the the response, or the has to be business response to that. It's like, oh, we need to, because if a human isn't looking at this, then we need to capture how do we tell the agent we are the better product? We have this distinguishing features. How do we get, um, I don't know if we call it agent search optimization, whatever that is how do we get the agent to actually see us, bring it back, and put us in the short list of things that human's going to look at? I don't know how that's going to happen. And I don't know what businesses have to do to get in front of that, and people, even direct to consumer. How do you get to do that, right? When you already have an agent. The joke is someone's writing something, um, and takes too long to write. Then, an AI writes it, and then the other person's too busy, and get flooded with even more content. So they'll have something like Copilot or something to summarize all these things. So it's literally an agent reading an agent and just giving you like bits and pieces. So no one's actually reading the full thing. So if that's happening, all this type of email marketing, that means nothing. Email marketing, maybe I'm the one. I'm not saying email marketing is dead. I'm not saying SEO is dead, but like, what does where does that evolve when your email is being written by an AI and your AI is just summarizing the AI and you're just looking at it? You're not even looking at anything anymore. So
Because the systems are built on human reaction. They're all built SEO, email, put what you put the subject. That's all built on how humans react. So your point is valid, but hold on. If you take the humans out of that situation, what does the system have to do? Does the system still have to do great SEO? I don't know, maybe not. If I want to buy something, if I want to buy a widget and Andy is selling it and Andy wants to make sure I know that the widget exists, well, there's AI agents working on both sides of that equation. I think a lot of times people think it's just, oh, look what we're going to be able to do with sales. Well, hold on. As the buyer, I also have AI working on my behalf. So to your point, I think is really valid, which is there's some sort of behind the scenes, sort of always happening, always evolving type AI system, I believe, in the future, which is Andy has a widget. He wants me to know that widget exists ultimately for purchasing, and if I'm the one that is going to sign the check for really simplistic sake. Okay, so Andy is going to set up certain agents to help put the right information out there that my agents are going to be out there looking for. And to your point, Carl, probably summarizing or putting in a summary and bringing it back to me. But I won't see the emails. I won't see the SEO content on the website. More than likely, what I'm going to see is whatever version we have at that point of AI agent or whatever that's talking to me that says, we're bringing this to your attention because it seems like based on what you're doing, where our ROI is, our projected growth, and where we need to go in the next step, we've been holding this and we're now bringing this widget to your attention. And Andy might have an indicator on his side that such and such widget has been elevated for using that word to make the short list, as you were saying, Carl. I think that's sort of what I expect here in the future is it's not really me reading an email or Andy sending an email and the humans doing that. It's the companies sort of always sort of continuously both looking out for the right solutions and the solutions providing what they do, what pains they solve for, and then only bringing it to me when it's sort of a just in time. You always talk about just in time training, or we talk a lot about the show. Hey, we're about to do 400 episodes, but those 400 episodes live long beyond the day we posted them. And so somebody may find our show at episode 415 and then go back and listen to a lot of the episodes before that. And so I think that's kind of what we're looking at for the future here is, I mean, SEO will matter, but SEO will only matter for how agents look at content between each other. And if that's not written words, to your point, Beth, and that's more of just tokens, then that's sort of the future of SEO is like, well, not how I consume it, but how business agents consume it.
Yeah. Yes. I am. Oh, what I'm thinking about as you're saying all of this, when we're talking about all of this, is the random number. So you can ask AI, give me a random number, and most of the time, AI, unless it writes a program to generate a random number, it's going to say 7. If you're just saying, "Give me a random number," and it says 7, you don't know that it says 7 most of the time, right? So, how much of that is happening? And the pattern and prediction is massive, if people are using a central like, if most people are using ChatGPT, right? And, another example of this is Delve. Andy may have 15, in fact, I think Andy does have 15 amazing alternatives for Delve, right? Go to Andy and ask Andy for the word that we should use, like, he's distributing this as Andy's product. Andy's product is "Don't say Delve, say these things." How many times am I still going to get Delve because it's just easier for the AI, right? We have not interrupted that. That's still enough of the good probable response that it doesn't really want to update this next thing. Like, there's some stuff here. Ethan Malik had a post about the tendencies of operator, and what they want to go by. And I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me, and I don't remember what it was. But one of them really liked 1-800-Flowers for
Right.
reasons that remain unknown, right? Like that kind of stuff. How do we how do we account for that? How do we get in and like tweak that? Now we're back to Golden Gate Cloud. Like there's just so much about this that we don't know.
Yeah, it makes for an interesting conversation though. It's like we know we can't predict, but all the things we're saying, I think, have a certain probable cause to them, or probability of happening, because if you're going to introduce more and more agents to take out the repetitive work, well, that goes a lot past like I have to write this email every Friday. Sure, that's a repetitive task, and that may be where people initially think, but all of sales, all of marketing is a repetitive task. And so once you start consuming at larger levels, and thinking less about this individual task that annoys me that I have to do as part of my job. And you start thinking bigger picture. You start thinking, oh, all of marketing is a repetitive task. The variables change, but it really is, it's repetitive. And so is sales. So does that all get consumed? Is that, I think that it just depends on where you think this is going and where it's expanding to and stuff like that.
I want to add something, a dimension that I think protects us a little bit from the sort of rote and predictable inclusion of generative responses by models. And that is the models are getting more and more sophisticated. They're becoming more multimodal, and they're being trained to do reasoning coupled with search. And that's what the deep research model is. And we talked at length about deep research. Now, if I just to have a prompt response interaction with a pre-trained model that doesn't have access to the web, I'm going to get delve a lot, right?
Okay.
Okay, but if I have a reasoning model that's doing an exhaustive set of examinations out there and taking the output of that and thinking about it, I don't think I'm going to get a simple and predictable response as often. So I think that the progression toward agency includes reasoning and includes access, real-time access and examination, exploration, investigation. All of those are, by the way, good replacements for delve. It's going to do those things, and what comes back is going to be a synthesis of a lot of information that is not going to look like, oh, that's obviously AI. It's going to be indistinguishable from a human PhD level researcher
Right.
and the articulation of the results from that. So I want to weave off of that because this I want to surface a subject that we haven't really explored, or a person and a subject that we haven't really explored frequently. It's kind of been down underneath all of the flurry, sort of the flooding the zone of DeepSeek and deep research is all the deeps. But there's a fellow named Andrej Karpathy who was employee number 4 at OpenAI, and we heard much from him. But in the news recently is that he produced and delivered a 3-hour video as one of the principal researchers in the advancement of AI. He did a 3-hour video that I haven't seen yet, but I saw news about it today. And he is exposing a lot of information in those 3 hours about what the nature of the development of these advanced models is. And so I'm excited about looking at that. But I wanted to tell you what Andrej Karpathy is up to now, because I don't think we've touched on that recently. And it has to do with education. So he left OpenAI and he founded a company called Eureka Labs. And Eureka Labs' AI mission is to make learning accessible and personalized for everyone. So here's a different track. This is not general purpose reasoning models with access to the web. This is, how do I create a user interaction, a UX experience for learners that is driven by an AI assistant? And so he says, we're aiming to create a future where anyone can easily learn a vast range of subjects through AI-powered teaching assistants and enhanced course materials. And the vision is to fundamentally transform education by integrating AI seamlessly into the learning process. Now, what does that look like? The teacher still designs the course materials, but they're supported, leveraged, and scaled with this teaching assistant who's optimized to help guide the students through the material. And it's a teacher plus AI model. So the teacher is still developing the course, but it has acts that he or she or they as the teacher have access to this teaching assistant that they're building that will really transform the practice of teaching and the success of teaching. So this is really an AI for good kind of initiative from one of the leading minds in AI. And so I just wanted to highlight that. Their first product is going to be the best AI course ever. It's going to be called LLM 101. It's all about language models. And it's going to be an undergraduate level class, the college level, that guides the student through that training. And in the process, they're going to train their own AI. so that they understand how to, not only how to interact with an LLM, but how to build one.
While you were doing that, I went and found the 3.5 hour episode that he put out there. And it's called Deep Dive into LLMs like ChatGPT, and it's from his YouTube account. Andrew Karpathy. That's Andrew Andrej, and Karpathy is Karpathy if you're going to look for it. But anyway, it's called Deep Dive into LLMs like ChatGPT. So as you would, I threw it really quickly into ChatGPT, all 3 hours of transcript, which it can take in one go, which is kind of nice these days. And I literally said to 03 Mini High, tell me some aha moments from this. Now, obviously, I want to watch the whole thing because I like to geek out on that. It said, here are some of the aha moments distilled from the transcript. Everything is just tokens. The model doesn't read language like we do. It just turns everything, even text, images, and audio soon, into one-dimensional sequence of tokens. That was the first one. Training is like schooling with extreme homework. So the training pipeline is broken into 3 stages: pre-training, supervised fine-tuning, and reinforcement learning. We've heard about those. I'm summarizing here really quick to move through them because there's 7. Limited computation per token means distributed reasoning. Every token in the response only gets a fixed budget of computation. That's why the model sometimes fails simple arithmetic. If you ask it to cram all the work into one token, it has to spread the work across many tokens, which is chain of thought. Hallucinations aren't magic. They're misguided imitations. That's number 4. Number 5 is reward models can be cheated. So reinforcement learning and human feedback sounds neat until you realize the reward model can be gamed with adversarial examples. So your quote perfect joke might end up being nonsense that somehow scores highly. It's like teaching your kid to get an A by finding loopholes in the grading system. Number 6, LLMs are statistical simulations of human labelers. When you ask ChatGPT who built you, it's not dishing out a deep self-reflection. It's spitting out what it has seen most often in its training data, often OpenAI, because that's the statistically most common ideal answer. And number 7, finally, future is multimodal and agent-driven. Soon enough, LLMs will handle not just text, but audio, images, and even take autonomous actions. They're all on track to become integrated agents, meaning you might soon have a bot that only writes your emails, but also books your flights, provided you supervise it closely. So those are the 7 that came out. Whether those are super accurate or not, we'd have to watch more of it, but that's what 03 Mini High.
And his last point there in that long exposition of 3.5 hours brings us full circle to our discussion about agents. So he's thinking very carefully about those agents and the particular application of an assistant that is an agent for the teacher who might be able to do deep research on the side to support the teacher's objectives in designing a course.
Yeah, 100%. Okay,
So
I know we talked about this for a little bit. Well, yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Beth. I was just going to say,
I'm gonna say,
we're wrapping up too.
given that, and he is a co-founder and brilliant and all the thing, we're doing pretty well because we say many of those messages on a review
Yeah,
basis.
that's what I was
So
thinking. There's no shockers there.
just patting ourselves on the back and patting you on the back because you're watching us. Hope you come back, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, that video is 3 hours and 31 minutes long. It's already has 200. It was one day ago, and it's got 293,000 views on it.
Yeah.
So yes, there's a bubble. There's an AI bubble, but 293,000 people watching some length of a 3 hour and 30-minute video. Of course, they could have watched 6 seconds and it would register. We know that. It's also got 960 comments on it. So he's somebody that has 635,000 subscribers to just his personalized channel. This is clearly somebody that a lot of people are going to lean in, like a lot of the other people we mentioned, and take stock of what they're saying, because they certainly have a viewpoint that's, from the inside, and that's really, really important on it. Okay, I think we can probably wrap it up there. I mean, like I said, we had a lot of different shows over the last 2 weeks, a lot of good ones. Didn't really get a chance to talk too much more about Nvidia. We were really talking about DeepSeek though on that one, and how Nvidia's stock had moved. You know what? Let me look really quick though, because I'm curious. I did mention it on the show. Let's just find out stock. Let's just find out what Nvidia is at right now. I'm just curious. We'll just do a 1 month. So
It closed yesterday at about 128, which is not far off. Honestly, it's not far off from its all-time high at 149.
So it's
I didn't even need-
recovered.
I didn't even need to look it up. Andy nailed it. And within $1 of what I'm seeing on my screen, you said the same thing. So perfect. I just asked Andy next time. Okay. So now hasn't recovered all the way, but certainly has recovered from the tank we saw when DeepSeek in R1 and all that stuff at the news cycle. So, as expected, hopefully a lot of people bought the dip. I hope so. There'll probably people to make some money off of that. So, all right, that's it. We'll wrap it up for this week. But thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for all the comments. We see you. We always see you in the comments. We appreciate you. If you like this, if you like and subscribe, I think if I had to guess, we'll actually do a show on a deeper dive into Andrew Karpathy's 3-hour and 30-minute, because I'm sure there's a lot more than just what was distilled down from O3 and that quick summary. So that'll probably be coming up, as well as a lot of other great topics next week. We'll be here all week next week. And 1 week from today is our 400th episode. It happens to be Valentine's Day, which we didn't plan. It's just the way it worked out. So we thought we would do something about, showing our love for our audience. And so make sure you're coming back all next week, because we're definitely going to get you more involved and get your thoughts on a couple of things, and just talk about what comes out of these amazing conversations that we see in the chat and all that. And that'll be part of our 400th episode to kind of celebrate, but also to turn the camera around to our audience and put the spotlight on you guys a little bit. So be on the lookout for that. Thanks for everybody signing in or watching, and like and subscribe. You can go over to the website, like I said, dailyishow.com. You can sign up for that newsletter. The next one will go out Sunday morning, about 8 o'clock. I missed this one. I put it at 8 p.m. But I got it out there in time. About an hour later, we fixed it. So normally around 8 a.m. Eastern on Sunday mornings, you can get that newsletter, and I think you'll really like it. So sign up for that if you like as well. Thanks, everybody. Have a great week. Thank you to everybody in the comments, and we'll see you again on Monday. Until then, bye, everybody.